Hi students, very good evening to you. I hope you have listened to my yesterday's lecture wherein I have given you a brief talk on three important background topics that you have to study as part of your prescribed syllabus, and of course they are mentioned in the um, syllabus also. Okay, so after those three, I today want to give a brief introduction to Mikhail Bakhtin. Okay, and his essay is prescribed for you. That is the discourse in the novel, of course, not the whole essay, but I think two parts of that essay are prescribed for your study. It's being a very lengthy essay. Okay. So before we go to the essay in particular, I will just introduce you to Mikhail Bakhtin's works and what is his overall idea of language, life, and other things, and then what is his contribution to the literary criticism in some of the concepts that he has developed, which are prescribed for you as background study topics also. So now let me share my screen first. Yeah, this is, I hope all of you are able to see my screen. Just for your sake, I have given you this pic of Bakhtin, Mikhail Mikhailovich Bakhtin. This is his full name, famously known as Bakhtin. Of course, this is a Russian name, so it will be very difficult. Take care of the spellings also whenever you write. So this is the man, and then to give you a brief introduction, he's born in 1895, and then you know 1975 is the year in which he passed away, and he actually is born in Russia and then oral in Russia, and when he at the time of his death, Russia is no more Russia, but it is USSR. Okay, so this is Russian. Actually, he is a Russian literary theorist and philosopher of language. See, most of the literary theoreticians, we are dealing now are basically philosophers or philosophers of language. Okay, we have seen how Saussure also, Ferdinand de Saussure also is a philosopher of language and linguist and all those. And he is, I think, he is a professor of Sanskrit also. So he is a Russian man, and he is philosopher of language, and whose wide-ranging ideas significantly influenced Western thinking in cultural history, linguistics, literary theory, and aesthetics also. So he contributed to many of the areas of knowledge like cultural history, linguistics, literary theory, and aesthetics. Um, so. With his works that are spreading into different areas of knowledge, he is popularly recognized as one of the major literary theorists of the 20th century. So, naturally, his work is into aesthetics, cultural history, linguistics, etc. And in the 20th century, these are the important branches of study, as we have understood with all the lectures that we are going through till now. Okay, and here now in the 20th century, after his death, even before his death also he received much attention, and after his death he even more became very popular and is being considered as one of the major literary theorists of this of the previous century, that is 20th century. And he is perhaps best known for his radical philosophy of language. So he has introduced a new idea into language. While studying Saussure's ideas of Lang and Perrault, etc., we have there itself I have mentioned Bakhtin, of course, contradicted with Saussure. Okay, he did not accept Saussure's idea of dividing the language, okay, into the two areas of langue and parole, where langue is the whole structure and parole is the individual speech event or speakers. So, of course, Bakhtin actually brought a radical philosophy of language, as well as his theory of the novel. This is what we are going to read. That is this course in the novel. How novel is actually a very important genre or a novel genre besides poetry, because he felt that after the genesis of the novel and its analysis and the stylistics that are required to analyze novel were not sufficient in his at that time, in his contemporary time, in the literary theory. So he came up with a very very novel ideas or new ideas about the analysis of the novel, and how novel is dialogic. That is what the in this slide you can see. So he analyzed the novel with the concepts of dialogism, polyphony, and carnival, which in turn are based on the more fundamental concept of heteroglossia. So heteroglossia, gloss is speech, and then hetero means many, language. Okay. So many languages are there, or many types of languages are there. That doesn't mean that if in an English novel there will be French or German or in Telugu, etc. No. Language is stratified for Bakhtin. That is what is the radical philosophy of language that he has developed, and based on that, he tried to provide a very comprehensive idea how to analyze the modern novels. So this is the important. Okay, these are the important points that we should know about Bakhtin, and further we will know some more. So his revolutionary ideas of dialogism, and then radical philosophy of language, heteroglossia, etc., are what made him very popular. Then his works, though are worthy contributions, tend to be elusive and repetitive. So, if we go to the essay, discourse in the novel, again and again he will be repeating some points. If you read, you will understand that. Maybe more explanatory. But this will be irritating to the readers. Yet, irritating to those readers who want a very economical and logical presentation of the topics. Yet his works are more worthier than the criticism, that is repetition and elusiveness, etc. So they emphasize what is there in his works. That is, they emphasize historical, cultural, and social specificity in texts and practices. So, what is the specificities that we can find in texts and other practices of a culture, of a given culture or a tradition, etc. So he focuses not in one angle, but he focuses on historical, cultural, and social also. So three-dimensional, focus that he actually has towards the texts and practices. According to his theory, texts should not be read through a modern gauge, but through their context. So he says that a text, if we take, should not be read through the modern gauge, means whatever is prevalent now at the time of analysis, but their context of writing. So a text should be, and the context of writing a text should be taken into consideration. That is why This is historical, cultural, and social. He also emphasizes that particular themes cannot be separated from their place in genres and structures of texts. So he feels that texts cannot be separated, and the themes that are there dealt in the text cannot be separated from their place and in which they were written in genres and structures of text. In a way it sounds structuralism, because as Sashur says, as a whole structuralism, and Bakhtin also to some extent takes the structuralist point of view only, though he himself denies that. Some structuralists claim that Bakhtin is a structuralist, and post-structuralists claim that he is a post-structuralist, and a Marxist claim that he is a Marxist. So many angles are visible in his works. Yet what he says is that a text should not be isolated. So that is what separating from their place in genres and structures of text. And phenomena should be composited, theorized, and understood, not simply seen as single instances. So they should be, phenomena should be read on the whole, not isolating them. Okay, they are not single instances. That is what he says. Further, he proclaims that things don't exist in themselves, but only in their relations. So um, this sounds like Sashur's structuralism only, and he says things we can't feel, or we can't state that things exist on themselves or in themselves, but only in their relations. He gives, for example, word we can take. A word, according to Bakhtin, cannot be read in isolation. We need a context. And of course, a word cannot operate in isolation. A word is always in a world of elasticity. It operates along with many other things. So this is how he says that we can't take things in isolation, but only in their relations. As a literary analyst, Bakhtin emphasizes the location of particular authors in the speech genres they deploy and in their spatial and temporal context. So he says that when you are reading an author, we have to read them in the context of the space from where they have written, and in the time in which the text was set, or in which he was writing, etc. And also the speech genres that were present at that time. So that means the text should not be isolated. Rather, it should be read in relation to the spatial matters, temporal issues, and other issues of language. And then Bakhtin sees being as a unique and unified event. Being is nothing but, this is philosophy, this is nothing but existence, and he says it is unique and unified event, and it is always event or co-being simultaneous with other beings. That is what, in other words, we have to see, not having any existence in isolation. So things are words or texts or even people, or our being here on the earth, life, are according to Bakhtin, they have exist with co-being, simultaneous with other beings. So we go on with other beings. And his early philosophical work, Bakhtin also insists that each person is unique and irreplaceable. This, of course, I used to tell you in the classroom that we are all unique beings. See, now medicines, if you take the example of medicine, no medicine is what you say, universal. Though we generalize, the combinations will not work. One combination that works for one human being may not work for the other humans or other people. So there itself, we know that we are all having a kind unique existence. Each person is unique, and we can't replace one person with the other. This uniqueness is given. So Bhaktin says that, we are unique, we are born, we know. But one more thing that is added by Bhaktin is that this uniqueness is given. That's given means by God or creation, whatever you believe, it is given. And we are unique whether we want to be or not. So whether you want or not, you are unique only. You can't lose your uniqueness. So, but it also has to be actualized by each of us through our life. And he, as a philosopher also, he says that we have to actualize this uniqueness through our life. Each of us make our existence into a particular task or project by assigning it meaning. So we will we should try to make our existence into a particular task or project by assigning it some meaning. And further, he says that each of us exists as relations between particular coordinates in time and space, differentiating and relating to other coordinates. This is the basis or foundation of his philosophy, even the philosophy of language. Remember this is not only the philosophy of life. He has given revolutionary ideas regarding the philosophy of language also. So as it is life of the human being, he is giving the example of language also. He says that each of us exists as relations between particular coordinates in time and space, differentiating and relating to other coordinates. So we cannot exist in isolation. Here, in place of each of us, like people, you can take a word also. A word also exists in relation to other word only, and a human being also, or any creation in the nature will exist in relation to other coordination. So this is the philosophy of nature or philosophy of life in on this earth or planet, and that is what is happens with language also, according to Bhakti. As the site of an event, the self cannot tolerate fixity. So he says that fixity cannot happen, and it is undefinable. It is undefinable also. He cannot accept fixity or single thing, etc. A person also cannot be fully revealed to or known in the world because of constant change and unfinalizability. See, this is the seed of post-structuralism also. So he seems to be emphasizing on structuralism in some ways, and then just moving to the post-structuralism also in his ideas. So in his philosophy, he says that a person cannot be fully revealed or known in the world because of constant change and unfinalizability. This is where scientifically also, if you take, nothing is constant. We think that our cells are and body cells are constant, our blood is constant, etc. But people say that for every 3 months your blood changes, without our going and seeking it in clinical changing, etc. So that means what? The universe, of course, has the principle of change, and there is nothing that is unfinalizability. There is nothing that is finalized. Okay, that and we can't say that we are this, that, etc. We will be like this, etc. Scientifically also it is true. Philosophically also, this is what Bhaktin is referring to. And of course, language also. If a language is final or fixed, that is a dead language, because we say that language is always dynamic. So this is why the beginning slide I told that he gave revolutionary ideas about language. We are always in dialogue, not only with other people, but also with everything in the world. Of course, this is, I think, is what is environmental consciousness also. So, according to Bakhtin, we are always in dialogue, not only with other people, but also with everything in the world, in the nature. Everything addresses us in a certain sense. Each of us is uniquely addressed in our particular place in the world. So, whatever place we belong, will be uniquely addressed in our place in the world. One can see one's exterior only through others' perspectives. So our exterior is seen only through others' perspectives, not by ourselves. And then he proceeds to say, and that is how very significant ideas of life, and of course the philosophy of life that leads to the philosophy of language is what Bakhtin has contributed. Okay, so with his contributions he became one of the most important theorists of discourse in the 20th century. So discourse, social discourse, or whatever discourse, the knowledge of any subject. So, with all his contributions, with all his significant contributions, Bakhtin became very important theorist. He is sometimes termed as the most important Soviet thinker in the social sciences. For example, social sciences, very significantly, he is considered to be the very important thinker, and his work also has substantial importance for issues of political resistance also. Actually, we'll be coming to that slide where he wrote and how he wrote, and how was the country, that is Russia, when he was writing, etc. We will understand why he was being emphasizing the existence in correlation, etc. You will understand when we refer to that, because he was working under the shadow of Stalinism, dictatorship. Joseph Stalin, during Russia, he was a very great dictator, and who believed in authority very much. He was certainly a controversial figure. So, writing in Stalinist Russia, Bakhtin was a very controversial figure. When Stalin is a dictator, he will not accept dialogue or dialogism. He thinks that he is the final authority. He will not allow any other voice in the state or in his nation. So, at such a time, he was writing about this every human being, being a unique person, and a human being existing in relation to other human being, as well as in every thing in the world or nature, etc. So he is trying to provide some theories which are very contradicting with the Stalinistic authority or dictatorship. So that is why he was refused his doctorate also, because of the controversial nature of his work on rebellious. Okay, and subsequently sentenced to internal exile in Kazakhstan during Stalin's purges. No, he was also forced to exile during Stalinism while he was. So there itself, you can realize how revolutionary his ideas were. So that Stalin has to make him. He has to exile, unable to live under Stalinist regime. And no, he wrote at a time of momentous upheavals in Russia. So when he was writing, Russia was very much disturbed, like the revolution in 1917, and that is followed by a civil war within the nation, 18 to 21, famine after that, and then the dark years of dictatorship of Joseph Stalin. So these are the natural calamities, and then internal disturbances, revolution, and then the dictatorship of Stalin. So in such a very disturbed, chaotic period, he wrote. Though he was not a member of the Communist Party, his work has been regarded as Marxist in orientation, and also seeking to provide a corrective to the abstractness of extreme formalism. So Russian formalism is very much known, as we have seen, and Russian formalism is what laid the seeds of structuralism also. Though seeds of structuralism are sought in Ferdinand de Saussure's work, even before that, even after him, some Russians have brought into these formalist ideas, one structure, believing in one great structure, etc. Of course, Bakhtin also believed in structure, but his structure, guarantees the uniqueness of each and every individual. So, and of course, all forms of languages when it comes to language. So, each dialogism, he believed in dialogism within the structure. So, here, some believed that he, though did not claim to be the Communist Party member, he has a Marxist orientation. And then despite the critique of formalism, he has also been claimed as a member of the Jacobsonian formalist school. Jacobson we have already discussed in linguistics and poetics. So, though he did not claim to be, though he was critiquing formalism, Russian formalism, Jacobsonian school actually claimed that he is a member, and also as a post-structuralist, and also as a religious thinker. So his philosophy is highly, what do you say, revolutionary, yet some people think that he's an ardent religious thinker also. So Bakhtin's career as an author reflects the all the turbulences of his times, civil war, famine, and others, dictatorship, repression of the governments, etc. So all these turbulences, differences, okay, as a what do you call disturbances that were there in the Stalinist Russia, and even before that, he actually showed in his work. He wrote numerous books. It's believed that he wrote many books in the post-revolutionary decade. So after the revolutionary, in 1917 is the revolution, and then civil war till 21. So after that, he wrote many books, and in 1930s, but only one was published under his name. So many books he wrote, but many were not published in his name. But it is believed that many were published with others' names. His books, which is written later and was very influential. That is Rebellious and His World. That is published in 1965. Were not published until much later. Okay. Yeah, though he wrote in 1930s, this book, Rebellious and His World, and many other books that were written by him were not published until 1965, after decades of obscurity. So because of Stalinistic regime and his contradictory ideas, countering the ideas of Stalin, he was forced to exile. That is why when he remained in obscurity, and after much decades of obscurity, he started receiving attention. Okay, very much from 1950s, and in Soviet Union itself, and he became like a cult figure in cult, like. What you say, which many people believe. Okay, a group with Bakhtinian group actually has evolved after 1950s, and then 1970s onwards, his reputation extended to France, and in 90s, even it has gone to England and America also. So you see some of the works of Bakhtin. He wrote in the Russian language, that is, I think, Slavic language. But many of his works are translated into English. Art and Answerability, Early Philosophical Essays, that is translated in 1990. Rebellious and His World, 1965. It is published in the native language, and 68 it is translated. Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics, 1929, and translated 1973. And this is what actually brought Bakhtin, these problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics is what has brought much attention on Bakhtin and his theories of philosophy, or his ideas of language or society, word, etc. And the dialogic imagination, the four essays. This is very popular. It is and it is considered as the fundamental text for structuralism as well as post-structuralism also. And then it is translated in 1981, and Speech Genres and Other Late Essays, that were translated in 1986. That is posthumously. After his death only, these were published, translated and published. And his important early essay, Towards a Philosophy of the Act, that is written in 1919, was not published until 1986, even after a decade of his death. So till now we have seen how great Bakhtin was in the areas of philosophy, philosophy of language, or cultural history, and other areas, aesthetics, literary theory, etc. So, and we have referred to one publication by Bakhtin, that is Problems of Dostoevsky's Poetics. I hope you all know who is Dostoevsky, and also Dostoevsky is a popular Fyodor Dostoevsky is a very popular Russian writer, and he is best known for his novella Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, The Possessed, The Demons and the Devils, etc. So, very great Russian novelist is Dostoevsky, and he also wrote so many short stories and many other works, 12 novels, 4 novellas, 16 short stories, and so many other works. So, just a minute. Yeah, I hope you are able to see my screen now again. So, such a great writer is Dostoevsky, that Bakhtin started examining his works, that is poetics. You know poetics. What is poetics? It is actually how the greatness, how he wrote the novels, especially he focuses on his novels, and brings out the greatness of Dostoevsky as a dialogic novelist, a dialogic writer. Okay, and in this work actually he developed the concepts which informed, or which were very influential in shaping his further ideas, that is his discourse in the novel, etc. They are these two, that are polyphony and dialogism, and of course heteroglossia is also one more concept of Bakhtin, very important concept of Bakhtin. Two dialogism, polyphony and dialogism we'll discuss now, and heteroglossia we'll be discussing while we go through the essay, that is the discourse in the novel, because there we will find what heteroglossia is, and how a novel is heteroglottic in by nature, by its very nature the novel is heteroglottic. That is why that is what he presents with reference to Dostoevsky's novels actually. So let us see what is polyphony. See, the word itself is revealing. Poly, many, phony sounds. Here actually, phony is taken for a voice, instead of a sound. Phone is actually it is taken from the music, borrowed from the music. And it literally means multiple voices, many voices. Okay. Bakhtin reads Dostoevsky's work as containing many different voices. So he actually derived this word from music to bring out the greatness of Dostoevsky's novels. And he believes that Dostoevsky's novels have many different voices. Okay, we'll be wondering, or you will be wondering, only a novelist will be writing, and so the novel will have only the voice of the novelist. This is what you could have been thinking till now, though you have read so many novels. But what Bakhtin says is that when you are reading a novel, actually, or the works of Dostoevsky, especially because Bakhtin takes that him as the example, he says that there are many voices. You know that a novel will have many characters, like major characters, minor characters, and all other characters. So Bakhtin says that each character will be having its own voice, which is not the voice of the author or the novelist. So that is what he says. Let us see here. So Dostoevsky's works contain many different voices unmerged into a single perspective. The single perspective is the author's or novelist's perspective. They are not merged with the perspective of the author. That means all the different voices that are present in a novel are not merged into the voice of the author and not subordinated to the voice of the author. They are not subordinated to the voice of the author also. Each character will have its own existence. As we have seen now, the philosophy of Bakhtin, that each human being is unique and that uniqueness is given. And of course, great literature should be able to show this uniqueness. And great literature, according to Bakhtin, should exhibit this character of polyphony. And Dostoevsky is abundant in showing the polyphony. Each of these voices has its own perspective. So if you take any character of Dostoevsky in any novel or in his short stories, you will find that each of the character is presenting its own perspective, its own validity, and its own narrative weight within the novel. So no character you can just brush away, thinking that it is not so significant to know about this character in this novel or in this short story, etc. So Dostoevsky he presents characters in such a way that there is polyphony in his novels. And actually, Bakhtin believes, or Bakhtin, likes polyphony because living in under the repressive Stalinistic regime, dictatorship, where no voice is considered, no other voice is considered. Only the dictator's voice is considered, and only the dictator's opinions or ideas will be carried out. So living in such a kind of dictatorship or what do you call repressive world, it is no wonder that Bakhtin wanted to present the multiple voices, or he has that eagerness of people, make people to recognize that this world is not monologic, rather it is dialogic. Even your life is not monologic, your life itself is dialogic. And this is to say that dictatorship is against the nature, and of course for the nature, because dialogism is there in the nature itself. So that is why he examines Dostoevsky's works, and then he presents that the author, here we can say the author is like the conventional author is like the Stalin, like Stalin represses all other voices. Whereas in Dostoevsky's works, you will find that there are many voices are audible, and each voice will have its own existence. And here Bakhtin says that the author does not place his own narrative voice between the character and the reader. So when you read Dostoevsky's works, or if not Dostoevsky, if you think that that kind of polyphony or multiple voices are there in any other works by other writers or novelists, we can of course try to examine those works. So he says that to say that this work is polyphonic in nature, what we have to observe is we should observe whether author is, you know, placing his own narrative voice between the character and the reader. No, if he should not put like that, and then what he should do, but rather allows characters to shock and subvert. And there is actually one work, this is the what do you call, the characters in search of author. If you Google, you can know more about that. Now I am not recollecting that name. So that means what, the characters actually, once the work is started, the characters will not be in the control of the author. So that is why, and the author, no, the ideal author or an exemplary author should allow this, the voices to play and these characters to shock and subvert. So it is thus as if the books were written by multiple characters. So he says that polyphony, if they are polyphonic in nature, we will feel that it is not written by one single author. They are written by multiple characters, not a single author's standpoint. They will not present one single author's standpoint. Instead of a single objective world held together by the author's voice, there is a plurality of consciousnesses, each with its own world. So he says, unlike the conventional or traditional novels, previous novels, Dostoevsky's novels actually exhibit a kind of polyphonic nature where we'll see that many plural consciousnesses will be there. It is not a single objective world, each with its own world. Each character is presenting its own world, its own consciousness, etc. The reader does not see a single reality presented by the author, but rather how reality appears to each character. So, of course, I think to some extent you can find this quality in Dickens also, where, especially what is that novel? The Hard Times or The Tale of Two Cities, even. You can, if you, I think you have read Tale of Two Cities, you can just go back and see whether each character is presenting its own consciousness, and it is it appears that it is the reality. So the how reality appears to each character is presented. So that means author should not present a single voice but many voices. That is what Bhaktin terms as polyphony. So what is reality? So the reality is not a fixity, no finalizability. That is what he discussed. No, because we all will have our own ideas. We are all unique human beings, and we all will have a unique way of perceiving this world or understanding this world. So the reality is never final, and the same should happen in the literature also. And those novelists or those novels or those short stories which present this kind of multiple voices in a single story or a single novel are what are very dialogic or great. They present multiple voices. And then further he says that the text appears as an interaction of distinct perspectives or ideologies born by the different characters. So how the text should appear? Bakhtin says that the text should appear as an amalgamation of different perspectives, different ideologies, which are the ideologies or perspectives of different characters that are present in a novel or a story. The characters are able to speak for themselves. So, author should make it like that. The novelist should make it like that, and Dostoevsky makes it. That is how he says that we have to read Dostoevsky's novels in such a manner. Characters are able to speak for themselves, even against the author. Sometimes they go against the author also. It is as if the other speaks directly through the text. So we experience that it is not always the author. Actually, this is a kind of deconstruction where if you think that whatever is written in a text or a novel or a short story is the belief of the author, all others will be behind bars. So authors, when they write, they maintain a kind of detachment. And of course, Bakhtin also is having the same idea. Though he was writing contradictory ideas, contradictory against Stalin's regime, etc. Of course, for that he was arrested or he was made to exile, etc. That has happened. Yet he says that the greater works of great writers should not be read like a single perspective, but we should read from multiple perspectives as if each character is presenting the voice of its own. Okay, so the role of the author is fundamentally changed. So here the role of the author is changed because the author can no longer monopolize the power to mean. So what does he mean by that? We can't question when we read the book. The author, of course, the role is changed. It changes. And no more he can monopolize the power to mean. This is all in the backdrop, whatever Bakhtin speaks of polyphony or dialogism, etc. All is only because of the Stalinistic regime that is there in the backdrop, which is trying to repress the voices. Because if at all anything is heard in the nation, it is only one voice, that is Stalinistic voice. Nobody can be against. It is all for Stalin. This that happened. Joseph Stalin, as a dictator, has done that. But we know in the what do you call, in the guise of democracy, that is what is happening in many nations around the world. Including our nation also at times. So this is the idea of polyphony that Bakhtin brings in, and then later, before he defines dialogism. So another concept that is developed by Bakhtin is dialogism, as we have seen in the what you call the beginning slides itself, that Bakhtin believes in dialogism, or he says that the nature or the creation by nature is dialogic, and human life is dialogic. And of course, he says that in isolation or in loneliness, we may not have any meaning, but it is all within a structure or in relation to others, the coordinating with others, other objects, other creatures, etc. So we are unique, yet we exist in coordination with other human beings or other things in the nature, etc. And so before he goes to dialogism, he mentions monologism. So Bakhtin believes that Dostoevsky's dialogical principle. So Dostoevsky's works exhibit dialogical principle. Therefore, polyphonic, multiple voices are there. Okay, dialogical principle is there, and it is counterposed to monologism. That means single thought discourse, also termed homophony, single voice. So monologism is like opposite to polyphony. Okay, homophony it is called, and monologism, that is the characteristic of traditional writing and thought. So he feels, Bakhtin feels that traditional writings have this characteristic of monologism. In it, one transcendental perspective or consciousness integrates the entire field. So, in the traditional writings and thought, he says that one transcendental perspective or consciousness, one way of thinking, one way of doing things, etc., integrates the entire field. So the entire field of life or philosophy or language is seen from one perspective, and thus integrates all the signifying practices, ideologies, values, and desires that are deemed significant. So everything that is valued, everything that is significant is integrated into this single perspective, or one transcendental perspective, and it integrates everything. Everything is one. Okay, that means dialogue is not permitted. Only one voice is permitted. Anything irrelevant to this perspective is deemed superfluous or irrelevant in general. See, for example, if we go back to the religious discourse in the churches, previously, if someone is trying to say something that it is not how the nature goes or the life operates, etc., it is called as heresy, and they were killed. Many scientists who try to explain the nature of the earth or the nature of life, the development of life on the earth or this universe, how is earth looking, etc. And if they say that it is not God who has created, but all creation comes through evolution, etc., it was not accepted. So this is monologism and monotheism. So one thing, only one belief, the other belief is not accepted. So let us continue what further how Bhaktin explains monologism and what is the what you call uh, what are the disadvantages of monologism and why it leads to a kind of repression or dictatorship as it was happening in his times in Russia. Okay, we will continue the next class. Hope all of you are uh, listening to the lectures and are able to follow. If you have any doubts, I've been telling you to interact. I don't know whether you are listening also, but please listen and try to interact. Okay, have a nice time.